Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar today. Our focus topic is showing you ways to improve your work and task planning with Microsoft Project. My name is Sarah Howard, and I'm with a Microsoft Gold partner called Progility. We've been implementing Microsoft PPM solutions for over 16 years now for large enterprises, and that includes everything from engineering, construction, IT, and new product development. People tend to get a hold of us when they can't easily explain what's going on across all of their projects. They don't know what resources are working on what work, and they have a hard time getting consistent reports and metrics to make project-based decisions. We offer services and solutions in three core areas. The first being deployment and consulting services, which is Progility's core business, where we provide professional services for successfully planning and implementing Microsoft Project Portfolio Management, including Microsoft's Project Online, integrating PPM with line of business applications, and delivering strategic portfolio management solutions to support top-level management planning. We also have a growing business intelligence practice that leverages best-in-class solutions such as Microsoft's Power BI. Progility offers a set of pre-built software solutions and accelerators based upon 16 years of experience, including a set of Hammerhead products that provide improved access to your cloud PPM data, accelerate access to visual reports and dashboards using Power BI, and connecting data between your PPM system and Azure DevOps, Teams, Microsoft Planner, and Active Directory to improve visibility, insight, and control over your work, people, and projects. Finally, Progility provides post-implementation support services, including expert care, which is designed to assist your PMO with gaining on-demand expertise on the solutions supported. We also offer training for your end users and administrators and have an e-learning offering that can improve your consistency and adoption for your users of your project management tools. We do have a set of upcoming webinars covering topics ranging from using Power Apps to support your project management process, to using Project for the Web to manage business projects. All webinars start at 1 p.m. Eastern, and you can register for one or multiple events through the Eventbrite link provided or by searching Eventbrite Progility in your browser. We hope you can join us for these sessions, which were designed based upon your feedback over the last 6 months. On October 13th, we'll be hosting a 2-hour virtual conference specifically designed for you and your teams. This is a special event which will feature speakers that include successful enterprise clients who will be presenting their lessons learned and best practices for deployment and adoption of project. We'll have a presentation by Microsoft expert on the state of project and its overall direction. And there will also be guidance from Progility experts on how to improve your existing Project Online system and planning and functionality considerations when looking into Project for the Web versus Project Online. You and your teams will not want to miss this exciting online conference, and registration is limited, so sign up today. And if you missed our virtual project conference back in April, you can now watch it online. It's broken into 3 sessions with client presentations from the state of North Dakota and Geisinger Health System, who've shared their best practices for deployment. There are also sessions from Progility on deployment and adoption best practices, and sessions from Microsoft experts talking about project in their industries and the overall product vision going forward. So you can visit the link here, which takes you to the YouTube playlist where the videos are posted. All videos from this and previous series are available on our best practice playlist on YouTube, listed here on this page. Topics range from managing your digital transformation program using PPM technologies to integrating PPM with agile and line of business applications. So feel free to subscribe and access this library at any time and share it with your colleagues. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Rob Hirschman, who's a partner at Progility, and he will be going through our content today. Rob, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Sarah, and everybody, welcome to our webinar today. We'll be focused on really work and project management as it relates to using Microsoft Project. So we'll talk a little bit about what the overall world of work looks like. We'll then flow into a discussion about how you can track different types of project and non-project related activities, some good practices around how you can go about planning and managing your work using Project, how to structure different types of projects. We'll talk about some setup options within Microsoft Project to address these. some methods for getting started, or actually not only getting started, but if you're already using these solutions, how you can kind of pick things up and improve on them with the current system you have. We'll talk through some of the different technology options and licensing and answer some questions you might have. So hopefully this is a good session and you learn a lot today. So when we start to look at it, how do people spend their time on a day-to-day basis in medium and large enterprises? There's really three different categories of work. The first category is what we call operational work, or keep the lights on, or sometimes called business as usual. And we found in reading several studies that are out there from the analysts, folks spend anywhere from 10 to 30% of their time working on these kind of activities. They can be things like break fix and help desk, but also doing operational support or just day-to-day work. So, there's bucket one, which is operational work. The second bucket is what we call administrative time. And this is time when you're not actually doing work, but you're doing other activities. It could be you're sick, you're on jury duty, you're on leave, whatever those things are. And that administrative time bucket is really important to measure because it takes away from your ability to perform the other two types of work. The third type of work we do, is project-based work. In many organizations, this is very heavy. In consulting organizations or project-based organizations, this can be 80 or 90% of your time. In IT organizations or R&D, it can be less than that. It really varies, but we find on average it's somewhere in the 50% range of people's time. So if you start to look at it, if we start to break that project work out, there's different types of project work that we do on a day-to-day basis. It used to be traditional project work, where we had a traditional waterfall life cycle of design, build, test, deploy in IT or other kind of methodologies. And that's traditional project management. We have projects, tasks, and activities. We've kind of run into a different kind of challenge over the last 20 years with Agile really taking hold, and Agile methodologies of iterative development where things have become more product-centric versus project-centric. They've focused more on epics and feature delivery and delivery of value, specific value points, which are deliverables in the project management world, but that's an ongoing rolling wave. So we don't actually know when things are going to be delivered. We want to get to a minimum viable product as quickly as possible and then iterate or grow that over time. So it's all about speed to market with Agile. And if we start to look at it, those are two different types of work, and we need to start thinking about how do I measure those differently? How do I track them? How do I want to get updates on them? What does the frequency look like? So this is kind of the world of work and non-work around it. So if we start to break that out, you'll see on the table here, we've got different types of work in the left-hand column. We've got, how are they tracked today? And then we've got the different tools people are using today. So just starting out, traditional project-based work, whether it's waterfall or some other non-agile methodology, is that work tracked today? Well, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And that becomes a big challenge from a resource planning perspective. Where do we see that work tracked? And can be often be in timesheets. It can be disconnected or connected to your project management system. It can be in emails. It can be a lot of times just in spreadsheets, project schedules where you can track the actual work people are working on, as well as your project portfolio management system. So that's kind of the first bucket and where it's typically tracked. The second bucket is Agile work, and this is tracked sometimes. Work is being tracked in an Agile or a DevOps system, but where are the actuals tracked in a way you can track it back to a person and how much time they're working across all their activities? Again, that can be done in a timesheet. Sometimes it's done in an email, sometimes in a spreadsheet, sometimes in a DevOps tool like a Jira or Azure DevOps or a version 1. So there are different ways we're going to be tracking, different methods for that, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I want to think about that as a different type of work, although it is project related. The third type of work is the KTLO or business as usual work. Is that tracked? Well, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. We find most often it's tracked in a help desk application where folks specifically in IT organizations are assigned help desk tickets. They're reporting their time on that. In the help desk, we can actually produce a report that shows who worked on what help desk tickets for how much time. But we can't easily merge that with the project information because that's in a different system, unless we're tracking that in a unified timesheet in some way. So that keep the lights on or business as usual maintenance, because it's such a big slice of people's time, sometimes we do want to track that. And finally, administrative time. Administrative time is always tracked, right? People always ask for time off, paid leave, they're sick, they have jury duty, things like that. They're tracking that in their formal timesheet. So you can see in terms of tracking information on the different projects and non-project activities and work, there's often a disconnect because that data can be in different systems and follow different processes. So if you're going to get to a point where you can actually centralize work management and project management, you need to start thinking about how you're going to be tracking that information. So, a lot of folks come to us and say, hey, I want to use project for everything. Is that possible? So the answer is it really depends. From a traditional project management work, where we have our waterfall or traditional, development work, that can be tracked in project, where from a detail perspective on the right, we're going to create a project schedule. We're going to add tasks or activities to that project schedule. We're going to assign one or multiple resources to those tasks or activities. And then we're going to either have the project manager update the progress, how many hours a person worked, or the team member is going to update that directly from your project management timesheet that's in a tool like a Project Online. It's pretty straightforward to do. Most organizations, especially IT organizations, do this so they can account for people's time and look at plan and actual and start to do resource planning. Agile work, you can definitely track it in a project management system. One of the challenges here, the work is often tracked in a DevOps system. So like an Azure DevOps or a Jira, where you've got Agile teams are working as they should be, developing products. They're working towards epics and deliverables. They've got sprints and activities and user stories and tasks. Now, what we can do in our project management system is set it up at a higher level for tracking. So the work is being tracked and the progress is happening in our DevOps system, but we want to actually track the time in our project management system at whatever level is important to report off of. So whether that's an epic, a feature, user story, a task, whatever level we want is how we want to track it, set it up in project and track it. We also want to think about, how do we want to update those actuals? It's great that we have a plan, but do we want, the project manager or the scrum master in this case to go into the daily stand-up, which is standard in the Agile world, and go in there and ask how many hours did you spend on these activities, plug them in and move on. It's a 30-second activity getting that information. Do we get that in a timesheet where someone's going into a Project Online timesheet and updating at a high level how much time they spent on those on a daily or weekly basis? Or do I want to do that through systems integration? Do I want to go into my DevOps system and say, hey, I spent this many hours on these activities and have those automatically pulled over to populate our timesheet? And that is a really good use case for automation there. One of the challenges is a lot of times in our DevOps systems, we don't have the same level of detail. So you think about it in a traditional world, we have an individual assigned to a task for 5 days a week at 8 hours, it's 40 hours. In a DevOps system, where the individual is picking up that activity, they're working on it for a certain amount of time, and they're coming back and reporting, I did this amount of time on that. There's no real remaining work on that if they don't pick it up again or if they don't continue on that, and there's no sense of a baseline. So we don't have that time phase snapshot unless we're using add-on technologies or extending out our DevOps system to map to the kind of actual information we want to track. So as long as we can set it up in a proper way, we can automate some of that, but there has to be a one-to-one match there. And that really has to map to what your organizational strategy is around Agile, waterfall, and bringing all that together. So definitely we can track this kind of work and project. It's just a question of the level of detail. Can we track keep the lights on maintenance work and project? Well, sure we can. The question is that already being tracked somewhere else? The bottom bullet here is, do I want to pull my actuals from my help desk and have that populated a high level project so I can see all my KTLO work and my project work all in one place? Do I want a team member to just go in there and have them track time against a high level bucket? And then the project manager would set up what we call administrative projects or schedules at a very high level that those team members can track their tax tasks or activities against. So we can definitely track, keep the lights on, business as usual maintenance work here. The question is, where are we getting that data from and at what level of detail? And finally, administrative time, absolutely. Team members would typically go into a timesheet, request time off, sick, jury duty, all that good stuff. So we can definitely use project to track these. The question is that the right place to track it? And do we need automation to move the data into the project management system? And why do we want to track all this information in one place? Simple goal. We really want to get a full picture of a resource and the team's work so we can do our planning. So we can say, I've got this many resources, here's what they're working on. So I have a clear picture of who is working on what. So I know when they're working on those things, when those things may finish, when I think they're going to finish, and also saying, well, based on that, when can I take on new work? When is Todd going to be done with his project so I can move him to the next project? Or does Todd have too much business as usual work? So much so that I can't actually apply him to a strategic project I have? Or do I have other people like Todd, like Sarah, who can do some of the work Todd does and shift that work around? And importantly, in the world we live in today, there's so much change going on a regular basis. What if the organizational priorities change? What if we need to shift and take our project-centric organization and move it to a product-centric? What if I need to take a bulk of my resources working on one set of activities, move them over to another because that becomes a higher priority for our CEO or our chief operating officer? These are really important questions you want to ask, and you want to have the data so it doesn't take you 2, 3, 4 weeks to get that information. You're kludging it together. It's in 3 systems. You want to be able to answer that question pretty much on demand and actually be ready for that, because change is going to continue to happen. We have to be ready and proactive with that information to make decisions. So hopefully that gives you kind of a flavor for some of the different challenges and some of the ways you may want to track work. What does this mean from a reality perspective? You're using Microsoft Project, you may be using Project Online. What are the different options you have for setting these up? So what we wanted to do is take a couple of minutes to walk you through those options at a tactical level. So from a work setup perspective, if we're in the Microsoft Project desktop client, building out our schedule, there's a couple different kinds of schedules we build out. The first kind is a waterfall schedule, which is what you see on the screen here. So you see you have a traditional waterfall of scope, design, development, test, training. It's a traditional waterfall set of activities. And there's a couple key things when you're setting up a waterfall project in Microsoft Project. The first thing is identifying proper task types. In Project, we have 3 task types: fixed duration, fixed work, and fixed units. And we set this up on each task, knowing uniquely how that task is going to be tracked and managed. What do I know? An example of that might be on a design task. I may know how much of a resource's time I have. So I may set that to fixed units. I have 20% of Jim's time. On something like developing a spec or actually developing software, I may go to fixed work, which is where I know I need Jim for 80 hours to perform this task because he told me that's how many hours it's going to take. Or I may have tasks that are fixed duration, where I'm time-baxing development activities, or maybe I'm delivering training sessions that go over a 2-week period. I've got a fixed duration, I've got a set of resources in there. I'm going to assign them to specific work within that duration. So the first thing about setting up a really good project schedule in Microsoft Project to reflect waterfall activities is task type. Super important. The second good practice for this is estimating your work and or your duration in units in an accurate way that reflects how long things are going to take or how much effort is involved. We call this effort-driven planning. So if you can go into an activity such as reviewing the preliminary software spec, we talk to the team, Sarah, Robert, and Todd, and they tell us, hey, it's going to take each of us about 60 hours to do this or 80 hours to do this, then that's additive to the 240 hours that are there. Come up with a duration when it's going to be delivered, and then we can measure each individual's progress against that work and duration so we can progress this effectively. That's also going to tell us how much time the resource is working on the activity and what else they can take on from a work perspective. So estimating work and duration at the right level of detail accurately is really, really important to being able to track work on a waterfall project. And the third key approach or best practice to this is assigning resources accurately based off an accurate percentage of their time. And you can see down at the bottom when I split the screen in Microsoft Project, when I go to that activity, I've got, in this case, 2 resources on a task. I've got Paul and Sarah. I want to think about, well, it's fixed work, so I need each of them for 48 hours, but how much of their time do I have to deliver on this? So if I say it's 48 hours, Paul is 100%, but if Sarah is only 20%, it's going to take the duration of that task and stretch it out because I know that Sarah has 80% of her time spent on other stuff. So that's going to take longer to deliver that task. So once I plug that in at Sarah at 20%, it's going to tell me this is going to take an extra 2 weeks of duration to get the same work done. Is that acceptable? Then me as a project manager, I can go, well, wait a second, I need this done by next Friday. Sarah, is there any way I can take a little more of your time? I talk to Sarah's manager. Maybe I bunk that utilization up to 40 or 50%. So I make sure she's spending half her time on the activity, that it can be delivered. And this is how you can get a really good picture for what people are working on, but also measure your progress and estimate effectively within any project schedule, specifically in a waterfall schedule. The good thing is you can set this up within desktop Microsoft Project and manage it locally, or if you're going in at an enterprise level and you want to get an enterprise view of your resources and projects, that's where a tool like a Project Online comes into play. Agile schedules. A lot of folks will tell you, well, I don't need to have a schedule, right? Agile, in and of the nature of it, isn't scheduled work. It's work that's being performed in a series of iterations to develop a specific product and deliver something to market quickly. That's great, but the reality is I need to measure people's time. I need to know about when things are going to finish, and I also want to know what things cost me. And in that sense, that's why it's a really good idea to have, at least at a high level, a schedule for every project you have in Microsoft Project, even if it's an Agile schedule, an Agile project. And just like in a waterfall project, you'll see, but we have different layers here. We've got setting up the desired tracking at the right level. So do I want to track activities at a feature level, at a user story level, or just at an epic level? And if it's just an epic level, I may have a project that just has one epic in it, and I track all my work and utilization of resources there. If, like in this schedule, I've got features, and within each of those features, I really want to know what user stories people are working on so I can gauge when they're going to be done, but also resource utilization, like you'll see on the right, then I want to have it at a feature and a user story level. But you see, it doesn't have 200, 300, 400 tasks. This schedule for a fairly complex agile project has 35 or 40 activities, and we're measuring at a higher level because we're trying to progress this for resource and forecasting purposes. So we're setting up the level of detail at the right level. We're estimating duration and work per feature or per epic. So it's a little different way to do it. We're not trying to forecast Jim is working 10 hours on this specific user story. That's all getting managed in our Agile system. What we really want to know is how long is it going to take? And based off that duration, about what percentage of a person's time do I have to apply to this? So I'm still going to go in there and assign a percentage of a person's time. And they're going to tell me, well, this week, and we go on a week-to-week basis, Josh is spending 15% of her time on this. Sunny's going to spend 90% of his time on this. That's great. I plug those numbers in. We get an approximate amount of effort involved in this, but we're not in it for the effort. We're in it for the estimates on the resources and the dates. When are things going to finish? So these are some of the things we really want to start to think about. The fourth thing that's unique about an agile schedule is we want to start to progress that in our stand-up meetings every day. And that can be progressed via going in and saying it's done, it's in progress, it hasn't started. So I get a good picture just from a scheduling perspective. I may progress it in a timesheet, which we'll show you, or I may actually progress it from integration with my DevOps system, where team members are going in and they're statusing those activities, the user stories and features, started and progress done. Bring that over here. So at least I get visibility in it, and then I can report off it. You don't want double entry by end users, but you still need some kind of detail so you can do your people and work forecasting. And so this is some good practices on how we see a lot of our enterprise clients set up agile projects in the system. Again, not to provide overhead or administrivia, really to provide detail for planning. The key here is you want to think about, if you are using a DevOps solution, aligning with that, aligning the data at the right level of detail so you don't have this misinformation or misaligned data between two systems. So one of the things we did mention before is managing and measuring keep the lights on maintenance or business as usual type of work. We used to call these administrative projects in the Microsoft project world. Now we just call them maintenance projects. And you'll see there are some things that are unique or different about these projects. The first thing is we're setting up very high level work buckets. And what we're starting to do is think about, what are the categories of work people would want to track, not down to the details, how many help desk tickets and what ticket did I work what day. That's all happening in a help desk application, and that's completely fine. What we want to look at is the plan duration that we want to measure this work over. And we want to think about, if we're going year to year, you'll see in this particular schedule, we're starting January 1st, we're ending December 31st. So that's our fixed duration. Then what we're going to do is start thinking about, the resources. How much of a resource's time do I want to allocate to server maintenance, to operational support, to help desk support? Some resources you'll see here, like Aaron and Erwin and Michael, we may assume 5% of their time goes against each of these activities. So 15% of their time total on keep the lights on maintenance work. We may have other resources like mod administrator who spends 40% of his time on this stuff. So we want to start assigning at a percentage of what we think the time they're going to be spending on these activities are. And that's pretty important because at the end of the year, we'll be able to measure. I thought Aaron would spend 5% of his time on help desk. He actually spent 20% of it, whereas somebody like Sunny spent 2% of it. And then I might want to move my work around in a way where maybe I need more time from Aaron than Sunny on projects. I can start to shift around the forecast based off the history. And these are really, really good concepts and ways you can use Microsoft Project to look at the historical data and reforecast it out. So this is a pretty good technique for setting up your maintenance projects. Again, how it gets set up in your specific organization is going to depend on the details and the level you're looking to track. And then for team members, what does the world look like to them? You don't want them going to 3 or 4 different applications to track information. So they're typically going to go to a timesheet that's in a system like Project Online, and you're going to see different categories of work. So within a unified timesheet, as we call it, we're going to aggregate the 3 different types of work we talked about, plus any administrative activities all in one place. This makes it very easy for someone to go in on a daily or weekly basis and update their plan and their actuals. It also makes that data easily available for reporting. So you don't spend that 2 weeks scrambling for the data, talking to managers, figuring out what people worked on, pulling together ad hoc schedules. All the data is available every week. So you can report off it, trend it, and then start to make decisions on it. So we're going to set up that KTLO maintenance bucket. That's got those different high-level activities. That's the first one. And you'll see here we've got help desk tickets, operational support, server maintenance coming right out of that high-level schedule. And then we're going to see a planned amount of work. We're not as concerned about the plan on a day-to-day basis. We're much more concerned about the actual and looking at that monthly, quarterly, or annually. We've got those administrative categories we're setting up. Things like administrative time, conference, jury duty, sick time, vacation. That's going to debit from a resource's overall availability. So they go from 40 to 36 to 34 hours based off that. Then I have a true picture of project and non-available time. Then we're going to be tracking our waterfall activities, like you'll see down here on the retrofit project. We've got side roofing, and that resource, in this case, this resource's team member has been assigned for 8 hours a day or 5 days a week. And finally, we have our agile activities. You'll see we have our CRM implementation where he may be working on a new feature here, which is going from the beginning of the year through maybe the end of October, picking up activities as relevant. We may have a high level on the plan. We're much more concerned about the actual here. So we're looking at the work all in one place, team members enter it all in one place, and then we can report off it all and do our analysis looking at a resource and everything they're looking at across all the different kinds of work and non-work activities. And this is a project online timesheet you're seeing here. So now that we have all this data, we can do some really great outputs in reporting. An example of that might be a time report where we can go in this particular report, we can select the time period on the left. We can select how's a specific resource spending their time from an administrator perspective. We can look at the totals of how much time they've submitted, how much been improved on the top right, what's been rejected, what's pending. So if folks say, hey, you never approve my time, you can go in and actually I've approved your time every week, or you're right, you've got outstanding time that myself or the manager has not approved. Then at the bottom, we have the breakdown of the time. For this particular resource, the administrator, there's different projects. We've got the administrative activities, we've got administrative tasks, we've got project tasks. It's all in one place. And then we can see the total look into the approved versus the submitted and pending work all in one place. So this is a great report to kind of see an in progress for what people are working on. We may generate some other reports. These all are generated by Power BI. An assignment report. This report can be very, very useful for trying to say, hey, a specific resource I have, in this case down at the bottom, Erwin. Erwin has different projects and non-project activities he is working on. So he's got that maintenance work. He's got doing an agile project, a mobile app re-platform on iOS. He's got an enhancement to a double fiber project. He's actually working on some service desk tickets here as well, and some maintenance activities too. So what we can do is over that timeline, we can see the total work, the percent complete of some of those activities, the forecasted work, and maybe the actual work he has performed over that period of time. You can select the resource on the right, and then at the top, you'll see for a specific resource, it breaks it out. So if 80% of this person's work is project-based, if I look at that chart, that green represents enterprise project work versus software development versus simple projects. So I can see the breakout on the type of work. Does this visually align with what I was thinking? I actually thought Erwin would spend like 50% of his time on projects. He's spending more on it. And if I'm getting good value from him, that's great. But if I had other tasks I wanted him to work on, then I might want to take a look at this and analyze it deeper. On the right, you'll see actual and remaining work on specific projects. So what's the remaining work actual? What are the projects that he has out there that have lots of work associated with them? This is a pretty good example of a resource report down at an assignment level, a detailed level. Again, using Power BI to do our reporting on that same resource, we can take a deeper look into a specific resource. So if someone says, hey, tell me what Erwin's doing over the next 6 to 12 months, we can go into Project Online and look at that, or we can pull up a report that says, what, it looks like he's underbooked until the month of, it looks like June, July, and August, where he hits a bit, he's very, very busy, and then he's got some availability. So if someone wants Erwin, I can see the demand and capacity curve down at the bottom. His availability is in green. You can see beginning of the year, he's got lots of availability, then it goes down, then it comes back up. His capacity line will show us that, and then his demand. So we can see the only time he's really over that demand is a little bit in June and July, but definitely in August. So I may want to say, well, what is all that extra work? What is his actual availability? He might be going on vacation in August, so he has negative availability in this case. I may want to think about planning for his August work and maybe bring another resource on to support that. And ideally, I want to look at this before we get to the month of August. And then finally on the left, we see the work by project. We've got a little sliver for the maintenance work. He's working on the health assessment project and also the new project number 1. You can see all this information because we're capturing it and we've got a standardized way to track and manage it across all our different kinds of work. So it really helps us get better visibility and insight into the resources we have so we can do better resource planning, which ties into work planning. When can we deliver certain work? So You've seen some examples of how this can be done in project. A couple of questions and things to get started with. The first thing is, what's the technology you're going to be leveraging? Are you standardized on Project Professional on the desktop and that's all you have available? Can I use Project Professional and Project Online to do the enterprise work and forecasting and reporting? Or am I moving more towards Project for the Web, Microsoft's lighter touch project management tool? The tool you drives a bit of the approach, drives how you're going to actually implement this. You want to start thinking about, am I capturing actuals in a consistent, measured way across all the work I have? If it's not that way, you want to work on that process first and say, hey, let's make sure we're all agreeing we're going to update our actuals every Friday, and we're going to do reporting every Monday. And we're going to do exception reporting for those who don't update it every Tuesday, and then we're going to come back and make sure that's all updated. Without actuals, you don't know where you are versus where you should have been. And capturing actuals is kind of the holy grail of doing any kind of project in resource management. You also want to think about your reporting. What kind of reports do you need to drive decision making? And does management need to get visibility into what's going on so they can monitor progress in real time? Reporting is a huge, huge driver for a lot of these systems. So you have that insight, you have better controls, you're not scrambling around with spreadsheets and project schedules. You really also, the fourth bullet down is pretty important. You want to take an honest look at what kind of training needs you have. We go to a lot of organizations and we say, are you level 1 to 5 on a PMI maturity scale? They're like, we're level 4. But then you sit down with some project managers and you say, okay, well, build me a basic schedule. And there's no consistency. They can build very rudimentary schedules and there's no actual tracking. Be honest about where you are as an organization. Take the pride and throw it away. Say, hey, we really need to train people on consistent use of the right tools and using them in the right way. If you can back up and do that, you can see a lot of value from using even the basic Microsoft Project on the desktop tools. If you don't train everybody in a consistent way and then reinforce that, then you're always going to have challenges with all these problems. And finally, this stuff does take time. It also takes money and it takes sponsorship. You've got to have some leadership that really push and say, hey, this is really important to me. Because if you leave it up to the masses that are doing the work, it's never going to get done. People are always going to get back to doing things the way they've always done it. So make sure you have a sponsor, make sure you have a budget, make sure you've got a timeline, and set some realistic goals for going forward with the solution. So, other folks will say, what is the specific technology I need to do some of this stuff? Well, it all begins with Microsoft Project, which is your scheduling, your work management, your resource and time management tool. Within that, if you're just using the Project Pro desktop for your project managers in a standalone way, that's where they're going to do their desktop planning and scheduling and reporting. That's where you use a Project Plan 3 license. That is the subscription version of Microsoft Project on the desktop you get through Office 365. I can start adding on top of that Project Professional, and then the Project Online solution, which allows me to do enterprise reporting, enterprise resource management, enterprise scheduling, tying it into other systems like a DevOps system. That's where we're connecting. And within a Project Online environment, you've got that Plan 3 license, which converts right over for your project managers from a desktop tool to an enterprise scheduling and collaboration tool. So Plan 3 is what they'll use. Plan 5 is for your directors, managers, executives, and the PMO that want higher level visibility into what's going on, that are going to interact with the tool. A good example of that would be a resource manager who may want to go into the tool and look at resource capacity and utilization, assign resources to different tasks and activities, or the PMO who's actually setting the system up, configuring it, and driving change and adoption with the tool. That's the highest level license is your Plan 5. Plan 5 users can also step down and use a Plan 3 license if they end up managing projects. And then you've got the Project Online Essentials license. This is for the team members who are going to be tracking their actuals through a timesheet and collaborating with the project team members and the project manager in the system. So those are the 3 licenses you need on top of deploying the solution to meet your specific requirements. If you're going the route of Project for the Web, which is Microsoft's newer, pure web-based, lighter touch scheduling tool, really designed for non-traditional kind of business project managers, the license for that is called Plan 1. It's a little confusing if you go to the Microsoft site. There are different licenses for different use cases. So think Plan 3, desktop only, Plan 3, 5, and Essentials for enterprise project management, PPM, and Plan 1 for kind of lighter touch project for the web solution. Now, Power BI is a technology we generally recommend for doing any kind of analytics beyond what comes out of project out of the box. And this is where you want to do some of the trending and reporting and ask very specific business questions, without having to roll that up into big, 4 or 5 or 6 project schedules. There are 2 licenses behind that today, and this subject to change from Microsoft. Power BI Pro, which is the tool you'd use to create and publish and access your reports through Office 365. That's the first Power BI license. For larger enterprises that are standardizing on Power BI, a lot of them are moving to more of a premium capacity. It's called Power BI Premium. This actually allows you to do the things you can do in Pro, but also do things like multi-page reports. So things you could only do with SQL reporting services before, you can do with a premium node or a premium license here. So you may want to talk to, as you're thinking about your PPM system, talk to your IT management team and say, hey, where are we going from a BI perspective? Are we moving to a premium capacity? Are we with a pro? Are we using another tool like a Tableau? Because that's going to play into your overall strategy. You don't want to just bring in a BI tool just for project management. You want to leverage enterprise tools you have. So these are the technologies you're going to need to address these solutions. Just some good practices, what we've seen from working with literally hundreds of clients on this. The first one in red is think about doing this in a multi-phased deployment. Try not to do everything all at once. And if a big challenge is we just want to start tracking project work on our waterfall projects, start with that, be successful with that, and then start working with your development teams to say, how do I incorporate kind of the best of what you're doing so we can measure all of our resources time? Do I need to integrate DevOps or Jira information with project? Or can I have the Scrum Master go in and just provide an update on a weekly basis? Is that enough? So having that multi-phase deployment says, hey, basic project management, resource management, time management, and then expand that out over time is a really good starting point. You have to have some kind of commitment to change. You can't just do this because you want to do it. You have to do it because you really need to do it as an organization. That someone like a CIO or a PMO director or executives are asking for visibility. They're asking for information that you can't answer. And part of that is changing how you're doing things in a way where you tweak it enough to get the information you need to make decisions. And if you're already using the Microsoft tools, it's a matter of really adapting those tools to the process you want to put in place and the kind of reporting. So it doesn't mean it has to be a 2-year project. You can get things done in 60 and 90-day timeframes or waves. Also, really consider the impact Agile is having on your organization. If it's new and you're starting to adopt it, if you're kind of full-blown Agile with a full Agile shop with Scrum Masters, what does that mean to tracking people's work in time? And sit down with those teams and listen to them. They're going to tell you point blank, I don't want to do things twice. Nobody wants to do anything twice. They don't have to. And that's great. Let's come up with a good solution that allows you to enter data once, and then we'll use that to keep it up to date in my project management system. Or just go in on a Friday and take the 30 seconds to enter the information. That's all the information I need because I need to charge resources back or I need to capitalize time. I can't do that without those details. And Agile doesn't mean no tracking. It just means different tracking. You also, in the blue box, have to have some kind of a management commitment to doing things in a different way, but to getting information, to investing, but also that there's some value in doing better project management. That scheduling and resource management leads to better management overall of the portfolio, more on time and on budget delivery. So think about really getting management on board and getting a senior executive or executives to buy in on this. If they see the value and they've done this before, it's kind of a no-brainer. Others, you really have to sell them on it. And finally, kind of playing to the multi-phase deployment approach we said in red here, think about piloting it for a smaller group of users on a subset of projects, and then coming up with an enterprise rollout strategy. It's very hard to do it all at once, but if you start with 20, 30, 40 users, 10 or 15 projects, 50 or 60 resources you've got, a couple of basic reports, and then learn from that and roll that out more broadly as you're showing value. That's the most important thing. And importantly, listen to your end users. They're your customers and you want them to provide feedback. Get them involved in the planning process so that you have their feedback. Before we get into the question and answer, I just want to let you know, moving down this road does provide organizational business value. It's not just about improving the technology, improving the process. The first thing it's going to do is give you really good decision-making data. You're going to have information to make decisions now, in the future, but also forecast and say, well, looks like things are headed off track with a certain program or project. We need to think about moving resources in a certain way. If you can go to your CIO with that kind of information before they actually see it being a problem, that means you're proactively managing things. And they're going to have a lot more faith and trust in you that you can make those kind of decisions within the PMO. You want to be able to really do real resource forecasting. And this is really critical for a lot of organizations. This means the ability to go in, look at what people are working on, look at what they're going to be working on, and start to forecast that out. So as new work comes in, you can shift work around and resources around accordingly. Without being able to do resource forecasting, it's very hard to do project forecasting. You also want to be able to commit and deliver on that commitment for project management, that you're going to be on time, on budget, within scope. And if things change, you're managing that change in a proactive way. And you can look across all the different options in the portfolio and resources to make these kind of decisions. And that's core to project management and project delivery. And it really helps position the PMO as a value center. You're not just a bunch of project management administrators that are running around collecting data. You're actually using this data turning it into information to make really good business decisions, to say, hey, we can take on another product in the second quarter next year. We can develop another set of applications, or we have some time where we have some downtime. Let's take on that opportunity. So it allows you to go back and actually bring on more work at times when you have the opportunity, or push back and say, well, you just reprioritize these 3 projects. I can't do these other 4 ones until those are completed. And you have the data to reflect that, so executives can make the right business decisions, just like anything in the business. Finally, one of the values and benefits of having a centralized project management capability and a system is reducing your cost. If you can have fewer project managers managing more work in a more effective way, that's what it's all about. If you can give every project manager 1 or 2 extra projects, not that they'd want or need it, and you can give them the right technology, so each project takes up 10 or 15% of their time instead of the 20 to 25%, you're being a lot more effective. You're giving them better tools to do their jobs. They're going to be happier at the end of the day. They're going to be able to actually produce information and reports without having to do a lot of manual work, which is really a pain in the organization. So these are some of the things when you think about going down this road, if you're trying to quote unquote sell your executives or managers, some of the business value. So we went through everything we wanted to today in terms of giving you an overview of the different work and project work types and tracking some value points behind that and approaches. At this point, I'm going to hand it back to Sarah, who's going to go through our Q&A. Sarah?
Thanks so much, Rob. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them into the meeting chat where I will read them aloud. Give you a few more seconds here. If you have any questions for Rob, please type them into the meeting chat. All right, I think that's it for questions. So to learn more about how Progility can assist with improving and implementing your project and work management needs, feel free to contact us through the info listed here. We'll set up time to review your specific needs and provide recommendations on the right tools, training, and approach for the job. So again, I'm Sarah Howard with Progility, and thank you for attending our webinar today. Have a great rest of your day.